Welcome to the Artsy Raven, a show about writing, publishing, and the arts. With your host, the award-winning writer, editor, and publisher, J.F. Garrard.
Welcome to another episode of the Artsy Raven, and today our special guest is Anita Rau Badami. So Anita's first novel was the bestseller Tamarind Mem. Her novel, The Hero's Walk, Can You Hear the Nightbird Call, and Tell It to the Trees were all national bestsellers and were nominated for numerous awards, including being longlisted for the International IMPAC Dublin Literary Prize. Anita lives in Montreal. So welcome, Anita.
Hi, thank you for having me on the show.
Now, you love telling stories from a young age. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Uh, yeah, I was born in India and I come from a family of yarn spinners and raconteurs on my father's side of the family. My mother's side was more grounded and, a different kind of person, my mother. But from the two of them, I I think from a very young age, we didn't have any television or any other mode of entertainment other than our own imaginations, and both of my parents encouraged that kind of, you know, go out and figure out how to keep yourself entertained. We don't want the word bored in this house. So I think my father's family, I remember my father used to tell us these outlandish stories when we were children. For instance, there was this leopard skin which used to be in our house. And I'm not clear if it was something my father shot, because I don't remember my father being any kind of hunter, but he claimed that he had gone on a hunt with some, a little small time princeling somewhere in India. My father was in the railways, okay? And for a child, this is like magical. A
Yeah.
father is wandering around with a gun with a prince in some jungle in India. And then he said that he heard this roar, and the next thing he knew, there was this leopard barreling out of the darkness of the forest towards him. And he didn't have his gun and he didn't know what to do. So when the leopard was this close, he stuck his hand inside the mouth of the leopard and yanked its tail out from the other end. So the leopard was inside out
All right.
and didn't know which way to go because it was inside out. And that's how that leopard skin came into our house, because my father had managed to turn a leopard inside out.
Wow.
And for the longest time, this idiot child actually believed it.
Well, you believe your parents are telling you the truth,
Yes.
right? So you don't ask, you don't doubt.
Exactly. And this was true of all of my father came from a large family of siblings. There were 10 of them,
Oh,
and
wow.
each one of them outdid the other when it came to tale telling, storytelling. He'd go out for his, my uncle would go out for a cigarette and he'd come back with some big adventure that he'd encountered. So there was that. And then from my mother, I got this from both actually. From my father, it was history, and both my parents loved to read, so our house was full of books. My mother encouraged an interest in plants and botany. She is a biologist, so she had that intimate knowledge of plants, botany, zoology, and because my father was in the railways, he was a mechanical engineer, and part of his job was designing coaches because they had to match the terrain. I don't know, I'm not sure, engines and coaches and things. So he used to go out on what was called um, online, which
Mhm.
meant that he'd go on tour, which was basically online, meaning on train lines. He'd go out on tour with the civil engineer and a bunch of other people who were involved in figuring out whether some particular terrain in India was suitable for new railway tracks and what kind of coaches would be good there, whether it should be narrow gauge, broad gauge, that kind of thing. So my father used to travel quite frequently out on line, and he used to travel on something called a saloon, which was like a house on wheels.
Mm.
So when it was just him, he'd travel with an entire entourage of cook and peon and all kinds of people to take care of him in a two-bedroom train, I mean, a saloon with its own
Wow.
kitchen and things on tracks till as far as the tracks would go.
Mhm.
And then the engine would just park the saloon there and back away and come back after a certain number of days to pick up. And so, there'd be a whole bunch of these. So there'd be one saloon for the mechanical engineer, another for the civil engineer, and so on and so forth. So when we had our summer holidays, we were allowed, my father was allowed to take his family once a year on these saloons to wherever he went. So at that point, we'd have a 4-bedroom saloon.
Yeah. Wow.
And we used to fight for those bedrooms. Even there were 3 of us, 3 siblings, and we'd fight even though there were 3 rooms. There was no need to
One was
fight.
better, obviously.
Yes. I want the view on the left side. No, I want the right side. So my mom, in an attempt to just keep us apart, she'd drag us off into whatever village or forest or wherever we were parked and point out all these the plant life and make us remember the botanical name, the common name, draw the thing in our little diaries, in our little journals, and make pressings. And then, that was to keep us busy for a good
Mhm.
3 hours. Then
Yeah.
we'd come exhausted and nobody would fight. So that was part of my life, this kind of childhood full of wonder. The world was full of excitement and exciting things and stories and wonder. And I think the writing began as an attempt to capture some of that many, many years ago. I mean, I've been writing now for more than 45 years. So, yeah.
Now, when did you come to Canada?
We came to Canada in 1991.
Mm-hmm.
I was about 29. So now I've been a part of the Canadian landscape for longer than I was a part of the Indian landscape.
Okay. Like, was it through marriage, or did you come as a student, or?
Yeah, my husband came as a student, and then we went back and forth. We weren't sure what we were going to do. I signed up as a student at the University of Calgary because in my life in India, I was a journalist, a freelance journalist, and I used to write fiction for children. And then when I came here, it was like I didn't know anything about this country, and I felt like a fraud uh, writing journalistic stuff. It felt more like as writing like a tourist. I wasn't going below the surface of things. I didn't know enough about the politics, society, culture, anything. And so, but also felt frightened that I was losing the writing. So I went back to school for these. They were offering a course at the University of Calgary in fiction writing.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, let me see what this is about. I had never written fiction for adults, just for children. So I got into that course, and I think I did it for 2 years. It was fantastic. I had Aretha Van Herk was my supervisor. She was one of the professors in the English department. And I think I wrote about a dozen stories over the course of those 2 years, maybe more than a dozen. And at the end of that, I decided to go back to school and do a master's degree because Aretha said, well, why don't you write a master's, do a master's? So I got into the master's program, and I thought I'd just use all those stories and that would be my thesis, because had opted for a creative thesis. As it turned out, I had to write a novel. She wasn't going to let me just slap all the stories together and make it my thesis. So that was how the first novel came about. My first novel was actually my master's thesis.
And that was Tamarind Mem?
Tamarind Mem. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Now that became a bestseller. Did that change your perspective on writing and being an author?
It gave me a fresh insight into the world of writing and publishing because honestly, I had no idea how book publishing worked at all. I had always written in India as a freelance journalist. I used to send out this form letter till I started getting commissions automatically from editors till I was a bit more established. I used to have this ridiculous little letter, which was, "Dear editor, well, this is an original unpublished piece. If I have not heard back from you in a month, I will be submitting it elsewhere."
Yeah, it's like a query letter. Yes.
Yeah. So if I hadn't heard back, I used in a month, really, I mean, I used to literally count down to 31 days, one extra day for the editor. I'd send it off somewhere else because I had been told I also have a diploma in social communications media, which I did after a degree in English literature in India. And in that diploma, it was a master's program. I took a course. One of my courses was journalism, and the journalism professor had told us that it was really bad etiquette to do multiple submissions, simultaneous multiple submissions. So, which is why I thought this letter was the thing to
Yeah.
do. So when I came here, I didn't know you were supposed to have an agent. I didn't even know what an agent was. Um, so when I was done with this master's thesis, the day I submitted the thesis to my thesis committee, uh, I thought, well, I'm going to send it off to Penguin Books because in India, almost every home that read anything had rows and rows of Penguin books. I mean, I had generations of Penguin books in my
Yeah.
house. My father's, my mother's, my grandparents, everybody's. There were these colored paperbacks. Each the spine was different colors for I can't remember for what reason, but still. So I thought I'm going to send it to Penguin Books. So I put the manuscript, my thesis, my master's thesis, in an envelope and sent it off to um, Penguin Books, and it just I don't know what happened. And with that little letter of mine, if I haven't heard from you in a month, I'm going to be sending it elsewhere. And to my eternal, undying astonishment, it still surprises me today. I did hear back. I did hear back in a month, and they did want to publish it. And I mean, it did undergo quite a lot of changes from the thesis format to, trade publication, a novel.
Yep.
So it was luck, I think, timing. I have no idea what it was, but after that, I just haven't looked back. I like writing big fat books.
So you a writer full time? Like, do you have a habit? You wake up and it's like a job, or?
Yes, I treat it like a job, as I did when I was a freelance journalist, because otherwise everything under the sun distracts me. I
Yeah.
can find many things I'd rather be doing.
Yeah.
I'd rather be painting. I'd rather be gardening. I'd rather be chit-chatting with my sister. It doesn't matter what. But anyway, so I shut the door. I never pick up the phone. Although I think that whole habit fell apart a bit between my last book and this new book. There were so many things happening in my life. I just sort of, it became really difficult to lock myself in my office, and now I actually have an office. There was a point in the beginning, I remember in Vancouver. In Calgary, I did have a basement to sit in. It was in student housing. But in Vancouver, I had a cupboard. That cupboard was my office. It was perfect. I could fit
Yeah.
it in. My
Yeah.
chair would fit in, and I could shut it was those, those slidey doors. I could slide the door. There was my office. So,
Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about Asha and her garden.
Mhm.
What was the inspiration for this, and can you give us a bit of synopsis about this book?
Yes. So Asha in her garden is the story of a woman who feels that she can take on life. She has taken on life. She's a bold, aggressive, ambitious woman who thinks that uh, she can cut through life like knife through butter. And if she is tenacious enough, and she's smart, she's a clever woman, she knows what she wants, she believes that life will always reward her. But then, and she's an optimist. She's she's a wonderful woman in many ways. She's strong. She knows that she's doing all this for her children. So she has this sense of purpose and duty and all that. But she uh, she thinks she finds it difficult to look inside herself and see who she is in the context of her family. She loves them, but she doesn't entirely give them the space to be who they are. And I think so that is her story. And then something happens to her in her own backyard, her beloved backyard, which she feels is her safe haven. She's brought her family from India to here, to Canada, to Montreal. Uh, and something happens in this garden which sort of shakes her belief system, her belief in herself, her belief in her family, in everything she had felt was what her life and her world was about. So that's the story. And the characters in her book are her husband, a cousin who she isn't terribly fond of, but who she has this familial duty toward. She feels she owes this cousin a duty, who lands up in her house in Montreal, and two children, a son named Dilip, who is her disappointment in all kinds of ways, and her younger daughter, Asha, who is an artist.
Mhm. Now, what prompted you? What inspired you to write this story? Was it character, or did you have an idea for a plot, or?
Uh, it's it was actually a feeling that I had lost my personal landscape.
Mm.
For some reason, when I started this book, and I started it nearly 15 years ago, I can't believe it's been that long. I had this. There were so many things going on in my life. We had lost very dear, very close family members to sickness in India, and we hadn't seen them. We hadn't been able to go back to India to see them before they died, and so that thing really hurt me in all kinds of ways, and I think that gave me this feeling that uh, I didn't have a landscape to hold on to. I didn't feel like I belonged in India anymore, that I could go back there and just slide in. Um, I was a visitor there, and here in Montreal, at that point, I didn't have French. And although it's not difficult to live in Montreal with just English, I just felt that it was cutting me off from the soul
Yeah.
of the city in many ways. And so I was just feeling afloat and deeply unhappy about my state of landscapelessness. And so I wanted to write a book. I was trying to I wanted to write a book about a woman like me, uh, who tries to do the right things, sometimes for the right reasons and sometimes for reasons that are perceived as wrong by her family. And that wasn't me. That was the woman as a
Mhm.
character. But I didn't want to situate her anywhere in particular. So then it occurred to me that, oh, what if I situated her in a hospital bed where she's in some sort of coma? And there was always this. Okay, so that was connected to this creature that was again part of my imaginative childhood. Uh, and in the book, it's a creature, a woman with long white hair and red eyes, and she's called the hag in Asha in her garden. When I was a child, I used to wake up very often screaming because I could see this. I'd wake up screaming and start, everyone would come running, my mother and father and everyone, and I'd start pointing to a corner of the room and babbling about a hag who was sitting there on this chair and who was just staring at me. And she used to terrify me up to a point. And then she became a sort of comforting presence when I was a teenager. And then she became almost like some kind of uh, omen, some kind of, prophetic creature who was there because something was going to happen.
Mhm.
And I mean, it was a weird sort of feeling. And I get up screaming. I mean, I was famous for getting up screaming and waking up everybody and frightening everybody else while I went back to sleep after having witnessed the hag, which nobody else could see. So I thought of that creature. And then I thought about this woman lying in her bed. And I thought that if there was some way I could make this creature have this conversation with this woman, this internal conversation, because she's in a coma.
Mhm.
And there are all these people surrounding her, her family, her friends, the people she knows in this life, drifting in and out of this hospital room. So I was thinking of it in theatrical terms, on the
Mhm.
stage, there's this woman on a bed, there's this creature who's constantly in her presence somehow, who she can see, even though she can't see the real people in her family.
Mhm.
So that was the original setting. That was the impetus for my story. And I wanted to open out this woman's life, to recreate, to rebuild this woman using the family, using the hag, the question and answer session that the hag has with this woman. And that question and answer I drew from another famous collection of Indian stories. It's called Vikrama and the Vetala. And the
Mhm.
Vetala is this creature who a king has to bring down from a tree, and that creature settles on his back, and the king cannot take the creature off his back. um, so the creature keeps asking the king questions, and the king has to answer the questions. And if he answers the question, and the creature will get off from his back only if the king cannot answer a question.
Okay.
But this king is known for his wisdom. And
Mhm.
if he lies, the creature will just kill him, because the creature knows when the king is
Mhm.
lying. So the king, every question this creature asks, the king answers. There's nothing on earth that he doesn't know about. So the creature is permanently on his back until some point when the king is actually clueless. So I wanted to use that format, that thing about this hag sitting in this woman's life, asking these questions, but I wasn't sure how it was all going to be. And then I did this. I wrote the whole book. I had all these clever conversations between Hag and Asha, and I had all these characters floating in and out. But the problem was, it was only a single point of view. It was Asha's point of view. But I
Mhm.
wanted all these other people. How was I supposed to bring in these people and their opinions and their thoughts and their what they felt about their mother or the wife, if we weren't able to hear them,
Mhm.
what was the point? So I had to rip that whole conceit out of my book, the whole thing of the coma and the hospital bed, and bring the landscape back in.
Oh,
And I think that process of thinking through this book and my own life and my own place in this country, in the world in general, uh, all kinds of things. There were so many things, and I love reading politics, and of course there was the pandemic in the middle of all this.
mhm.
So it was like, I don't want to bring in everything in 15 years, everything that's been going on. I want to focus on this family because lives continue to be lived no
Mhm.
matter what happens. So, yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
Asha is an older lady. Like in a lot of books, they choose younger protagonists. Like,
Mhm.
this is an important part of telling her story to you.
Yes. I kept making her older and older.
Okay.
She started off at 50. We started off as at her birthday, her 50th birthday party. And then I thought, oh, but I need her to be looking back and looking forward and looking, there needs to be that huge sort of circle of stories. I needed both the perspective and the history. So I needed her to be older. I needed everybody to be older so that they could go back and forth. And I just, I'll be 65 this year, so 70 didn't seem like a far reach. I think I've become a little wiser, a wee
Well, my
bit.
mom was excited about the discounts. It's like, finally, some more discounts for me.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Oh gosh. Now, what message do you hope readers take away from your book after reading
Hmm, what message? I think, and I think this might sound cliched, but I think I hope that they go away with a sense of hope. Uh, you know, that was one of the things that was a running thread when I was writing this book. That no matter what happened in my life, in my personal life, I was gonna continue writing. My life might unfold in unexpected ways. I don't know what. And similarly, the characters in this book, Asha ends up in a place she would never have dreamt of when she left India, when she was a girl, when she was a child, nothing. Her life has gone to places she did not expect it to go to. And she has survived, she has thrived. Everybody has landed sort of on their feet and hasn't done too badly. And I think that it's part of my way of thinking too. I One of the reasons, and I know that it's not possible for everybody to be hopeful or optimistic, but I think it's also the thing that keeps human beings alive. It's the thing that keeps you getting up in the morning and moving on to the through the day and into the next day. And you're in trouble when that becomes impossible. But
it.
on the whole, human beings, even animals, they get up, whether it's a dog that gets up with the anticipation of food, you know, and struggles if a dog is, dying somewhere, it'll struggle to somehow live. And I think it's that hope that keeps
Mhm.
all of us going. And I hope that's the thing I would like readers to take away from this book, that sense of hope.
Okay. Now, thinking about new writers, like, is there anything you wish you would learn or any good advice you were given throughout your career that you wish to share?
um, Well, the first bit of advice was persistence, which my father gave me. I remember when my first story, uh, I was dying to send it out. I must have been 17. And my dad said, well, put it in an envelope. And back then, we used to not just have an envelope for the story, I also used to have to stick in a self addressed stamped envelope for a return. So he said, what are you going to lose? The cost of two stamps, one to send it out, one to come back. And if it comes back, what have you lost? You've just gained a small dent in your ego, which is healthy. So basically, don't give up, keep writing. You can't just sit there and say, oh, I want to be a writer and not write a single word. It's a practice. That's why they say the writing practice or the artistic practice, because it is practice. Every time you write, you you rewrite it 100 times till it becomes the perfect sentence as far as you're concerned, or the perfect paragraph. So it's the writing and the rewriting. So you need persistence, you need patience, you need to be in it for the long run. You can't just give up after, say, 1 month or 1 year. And a lot of reading. I read everything there is to read. I read, I'm not snobby about what I read. I read everything. Everything has a virtue. Everything that's written, there's some craftsmanship, there's some skill that has gone into creating that piece of writing. And it also gives me new information about the world and new ways of looking at the world. So I think those two go in hand, read. I also read to find out what's new out there, you know, what, because I mean, there's new language itself is constantly evolving and changing generationally, historically, any ways you look at it. And I'm curious, I'm never going to be able to write like a 25-year-old. It's a whole different vocabulary, whole different way of thinking. But I like to know what they're writing, and I love some of the writing. So,
So, Anita, you're going to do a reading. Can you give us a bit of context and then you can start reading?
yeah. So I'll be reading from my novel, Asha in Her Garden. And Asha, this is in the afternoon. One afternoon, Asha has just got home from work early. She's wandered out into her garden, and she's been attacked in her garden. So she's lying on the grass, and this is what happens while she's lying there. And her husband Suresh shows up. Her cousin Meru, who also lives in the house, comes down from upstairs. So this chapter is about that moment. Uh, it's called Always Wrong. At first, Asha thought the person hovering over her was old woman doing her appearing trick. Then she realized it was Suresh with a large, lacy white hat on his head. It seemed a strange sort of thing for him to be wearing. Was it something he had acquired to replace his original Robin Hood flaneur hat? He was asking her if she was okay when it was obvious that she wasn't. Where were you? She wanted to demand, but was too exhausted to do so. What took you so long? Instead, she wasted her breath assuring him she was fine, even though she didn't feel fine. The blood on her hand from touching the back of her head worried her, her aching head. She wanted to lie down and go to sleep. Her eyelids felt as if they had boulders weighing them down, and waves of nausea rode up her gorge. She tried to sit up again, fell back dizzily. It seemed absurd that she, Asha Mohan, who was rarely, if ever, ill, had been brought down by some fool of a boy in a hoodie, armed with a few thuggish words and a length of pipe. With her eyes shut, sounds became important. A swing squeaked rhythmically somewhere nearby. A child shrieked and laughed, fear and joy entwined. A blue jay called desperately for its mate. Maybe Popcorn, the neighbor's cat, always slinking through the bushes, lurking like a nightmare, had finally managed to catch herself a beautiful blue meal. Leaf blower, jackhammer, pile driver, tree cutter, all those city noises. Her breath hissed unevenly in and out of her body. A bumblebee droned close to her ear, and she traveled with it deep into the throat of a flower, the terror of its unknown journey and its pleasure too, reverberating through her being. The earth rumbled against her body. A worm tunneled into the soil. Leaves twirled down and touched the moist ground on which she lay. She allowed her head to droop and fall against her shoulder, then opened her eyes and once again saw beyond the fence the undulating road with its fissures and single large pothole. This had grown enormous over the past year, and so infuriated Suresh that he had taken to calling the pothole hotline set up by the city at least once every week to complain about it. She had begged him to stop harassing the municipality, but he had refused. Doing my civic duty, he had said. Wasting your time, Asha had replied. The city probably has you listed in its files as the local crazy. The road crept along on the other side of the fence, and as she stared, it seemed to turn fluid, undulating like a slow river and turning misty, from solid to liquid to air and back again. Back again, Asha thought. That's how rain became, and snow and ice and hail and sleet. Transformation and sublimation, the cycle of things always and forever. It was how the planets moved, round and round and round, and the sun and the stars and everything else that spun in the universe. And she, Asha Mohan, launching off on her 51st year, a mote in the grand order of things, was flat on her back, helpless as an insect crushed beneath her own large chaos of a body. How many insects crushed beneath her? Oh, sad fragilities, soon to be dust, she reflected, feeling tearful. Closer to her face, a cluster of colors shifted slightly in the breeze. Old leaves clinging to their memories of youth, or merely debris littering her garden. How you describe a thing depends on how you look at it, and there were as many ways of looking at a thing as there were leaves on a tree. She felt gloriously wise. She took an inventory of her capabilities. Thoughts? Check. Memories? Check. Pain, discomfort, any kind of physical sensation? Yes. Sight? Slightly blurred. Hearing? Yes. All okay in general. So why was she lying on her back, refusing to move, refusing to acknowledge her husband, who was saying a stream of things, touching her face, his touch like that of a fly, his breathing anxious? A sneeze tickled, but it was stuck somewhere inside her nose. When she was a child, her mother would tilt her chin up with a finger and say, "Look up, look at the sun god, Asha." If she did, the god would yank the tickling sneeze out of her. Family superstition spun around the sneeze. Silly details, frills and feathers sewn onto a life to give it texture. Asha had said the same thing to Dilip and Anjali. all grown up now, with little faith in such stories. Look up, the sun god will pull it out. Look up, Asha, the sun god will pull out the hurt. Oh, the hurt of knowing that her son, her son was somehow involved in this thing that had happened to her in her beard, her garden, her safe place, her private Eden. But was Eden really a safe place or only pretending to be one? Asha shut her eyes again. It seemed an eternity since she had been attacked. How long was eternity exactly? How long was time? How wide or vast or deep? A ball of thread unspooling infinitely, an arrow of light shooting out to an unknown beyond, a square, a circle. What was the shape of time? Her world was suddenly formless, no head, nor tail, nor anything in between. That poet again. Was this what nothingness felt like? Do you know his name? She mumbled, because Suresh was there beside her and he knew everything about poets and hedges and food and all. Whose name? Never mind. She hoped she was not too damaged by the unspeakable thing that had just happened to her. All she could do now was wait for the next thing to happen. She, Asha Mohan, who was always buzzing around, busy as a bee, a daughter, a wife, a mother, a cousin, a woman with a job and a corner office, and who lived in a two-story brick house at the corner where two roads meet. What happened? Meru was saying. Where had she come from? From the window, Meru said. I saw someone running. Did you see him, Suresh? You were both in the house? Asha thought. I called out and nobody answered. And then this happened to me and you allowed it to happen? How could you? Why isn't she moving? Nehru again. Because I don't want to, silly, Asha thought, annoyed by this woman who had hurt her when they were children and had now moved into her home to hurt her some more. Then there was a white hand on her forehead, as if in blessing, or to check if she was warm from a fever. She knew her husband's hand. It had wandered all over her body. What a daft thing to check for. Who ever became feverish after being hit on the head and pushed to the ground by a stranger? The fever came afterwards, many hours later, if there was damage inside the brain. Remember the time their daughter had been hit on the head by the end of a hockey stick? Remember how she and Suresh had stayed up all night, his big hand periodically checking Anjali's temperature, making sure she was not hurt beyond the broken skin on her forehead? Asha herself had no memory of her father's touch, barely remembered his face, only carried with her the smell of medicines on the table by his bed. Should we carry her inside? Meru asked. I wouldn't. I'd wait for the ambulance, Suresh said. Are you sure? She looks she looks all wrong. Yes, thought Asha, her eyes following a plastic bag drifting like a pallid ghost across the road beyond the green fence that was supposed to protect her from the world on the other side. Yes, I am all wrong. Always have been, about everyone and everything. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you.
The Artsy Raven is produced by Dark Helix Press. Introduction voiceover by Chris Gorman. Music by Tim Moore. Please access your bonus content on the Patreon website. Thank you very much for listening, and please stay safe.